That the closed meeting be closed and the board certifies to the best of each member's knowledge only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting to which this certification applies, and only such business matters as were identified in the motion concerning the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered. Do I hear a second? Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Okay, Mr. Crowder, the athletic director will present information regarding the athletic trainers.
Pass them down.
Get you to pass around.
All right.
The only thing we have in action is the athletic training.
No, sir, we have other things.
Well,
It's
We
not
have
listed.
personnel, we have the athletic trainers, and we also have the soccer. So we're going to do all of them after we do our presentations.
that's what we did.
No, this is not the same thing.
That's different.
Looks the same to me.
There's more.
I think you meant to give us this.
Which one? Oh, okay.
Madam Chairman, Dr. Crawley, board members, I appreciate you having me back again tonight. I've returned to you to ask you to take action and approve the hiring of an athletic trainer for each end of the county. I'd like to recommend that you look at it as an 11-month contract on the teacher pay scale. And I'll distinguish 11-month contracts because football, volleyball, cross-country practice begins at the 1st of August, and it would cover that time period. Another way of looking at it would possibly be a 10-month contract with a per diem or something of that nature. I'd like to suggest from the other schools that I've talked with and researched, the best situation seems to be an athletic trainer that comes in on a flexible schedule, possibly noon or 1 o'clock, teaches one class related to his profession or her profession, and then finishes the end of the day at the end of the activity whatever activity is going on that day, whether it's a game or practices. Most sources that I talked with either do not involve or sparsely involve middle school athletics. We would like to consider having them cover middle school football as well as all high school, and then have the flexibility to work with the middle school students as it's a short travel for either high school, from either high school. I have given you Region 8 information. Which is, there's one error on it, but from Amelia down through Prince Edward, I believe it's 6 of the schools in Region 8 do have athletic trainers. One is working, Cumberland is working very hard to employ one, which it will happen before football season is over, I'm sure. That's the pending one. 3 that do not. They all work or pay in a variety of ways. Again, from what I can tell, the best scenario is the full-time trainer on the teacher's salary. I attended a meeting in Richmond today with Region 2A East. It's 25 schools that we compete against. 17 out of the 25 do have athletic trainers. It's a mixed bag, but the majority of them, yes, ma'am. There were 4 no, and there were 4 I did not get an immediate response to. I didn't poll them in the meeting, I polled them in an email. These are the schools that we compete against in our regional and conference championships. Since at least 2002, the Virginia High School League and the National Federation of High School Sports has recommended that high schools have athletic trainers. And I'm here to ask you to consider that. And if you have any questions,
I have a couple of questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Number one, is this in the, have you talked to Ms. Garner, and is this in the budget? And if so, where are we going to find the money?
I have not specifically talked with Ms. Garner on this. No.
Okay. Second thing, when you came before us the last time, one of the issues that you brought up is that the rescue squads are 11 to 18 minutes out. Now, the athletic trainer is not an EMT, is not a paramedic. The athletic trainer cannot treat until somebody gets there. So we still haven't resolved that problem of that 11 minutes. What is your suggestion for that?
I specifically hope, and I did not want that to become an issue last time, our need for rescue squad coverage and our need for an athletic trainer are 2 totally different things. I will never stop asking for our rescue squads to be there, and I want them there for that immediate extraction, treatment, and so forth.
But that was part of your reasoning at the last meeting.
It was a coincidence at our last meeting, and I tried to point that out, that one sort of tumbled over top of the other. I didn't really come to the meeting to talk about the rescue squad last time, or realistically this time either. Our need for an athletic trainer has been there for longer than 10 years. Our request for an athletic trainer has been there since Mrs. Hill was the superintendent. This is the first time we've gotten to this level with it.
Again, where's the funding coming from? That's a concern.
I'm
for me.
asking you for the funding for it.
Okay.
I'm asking the board.
That's what I'm
Is
wondering.
it in the
We
budget?
should wait for a new budget cycle, the next budget. That way you'd know you had the
I
money.
mean,
Overspend.
before I can vote for anything, I need to know that we have the money to cover it in the budget.
That's why I'm thinking maybe it should wait for a new budget cycle.
I have been given a budget
Yeah.
that's by someone else. I did not have enough time to go through that budget and see what's in there. I know that we need
Question, what do we do with Centergenics money?
That's in a whole different category, Mr. President.
I know we can ask the Board of Supervisors for a categorical transfer.
We can, but when we were doing our budget, we knew Synergistic was going to end at a certain time, and so all of the figures that we calculated and estimated were based on that.
What if we'd have voted to renew Centergenics? We'd have been in real trouble.
So from everything we saw, that was not going to happen. We've been begging to get rid of it.
I know we spent $500,000 on it, I just wanted,
All I'm saying is that at this point, I've got to look at it. I have not had the opportunity to go through what was left for me well enough to see where personnel has been placed and what categories they're in, and to make sure we are good where we are right this minute.
I have one more question. Did we find out how much the rescue squads would charge to be at our games? Because I think I feel better with the rescue squad there than an athletic trainer there if we had to choose between. So do we know how much they would charge to be at the games?
I paid $100. Well, I've been billed $100 for the last ball game. It'll be $100 a game is what I can tell now.
I would feel really comfortable with the rescue squad there, even versus, an athletic trainer. If we had to choose, but.
And if you're having to pay one rescue squad, then you need to be paying both at both ends to, if that's how it's being worked out, then you need to meet with all the rescue squads and see what they need, and then, you need to be able to pay all of them the same thing.
Ms. Tanner?
I don't negotiate with the.
Or
I mean,
you need to
it's
meet, you
not
need to
billed
meet with
us.
them to find out what it's going to take to make sure that they're going to be there. There's also a firm that's working with Microsoft now that has EMS, provides EMS, and they provide them for events too, so you may want to look into that as well.
Who can I contact? on
I'll
that?
send you the
Can
information.
You do that? Thank you.
Excuse me.
Go ahead, Ms.
I realize that budget is a real animal that we're dealing with. However, based on what has happened in this county before, I think it is prudent for us to look deep and hard to see what we can do. And I don't think I have to explain to anyone what I'm referring to when I say what has happened in this county. We do not want to be caught in a situation wherein that, let's just say, we need to do something, folks, even if we have to go back and revisit some other things that we have, or back to the Board of Supervisors. Hopefully, if we go in with the right attitude and discuss what it is that we're up against. Well, I'll go ahead and say it. We had a young man that I'm not sure whether or not it was directly related to the game or not, but it's things like that that we have to consider when we are trying to decide whether we're going to go with an athletic trainer or not. And yes, having a squad there, I was at the ball game Friday before last, and when that squad left, and the people sitting beside me saying, well, they got him and gone. I said, yeah, but I'm worried because now there is not a squad on this campus. So that is something that we need to deal with.
If I may say, this, again, the squad and the trainer are two different issues. I held up 3 contests last year that were not football games, that were not soccer games. They were inside. We're not, where we do not have a rescue squad. We traditionally have only had them for football. Most recently, we've been trying to have soccer, especially boys soccer. I'm talking about someone who's there every day for practice. I'm talking about the Tuesday and the Wednesday practices of football that are extremely contact oriented. I'm talking about basketball practice, boys and girls. I'm talking about the upcoming wrestling season and practice, where we have someone there who not only is certified through Virginia to deal with things that happen along this nature, medical emergencies or just medical issues, but also they are familiar with your children and their previous medical events, whether it was a concussion 3 weeks ago, and he's been cleared to come back. That athletic trainer is sitting there watching the game, watching the individuals, watching whichever practice they're at, and observing, and they have the authority to go to the coach and say, he's coming out until I evaluate him. I don't have that with a rescue squad member. And he's doing that to protect the child and to protect us.
I have one more
It's
question.
it's a
I know what you're
big
saying,
difference.
and I don't think any of us disagree that this is something that's needed. However, it is still our job to ask the questions
Yes,
about
ma'am.
where the money is and is it in the budget? And if it's not, then unfortunately, sometimes we have to say no. If it is, then that's something that we can look at. But you were bringing up a good point when you were saying the parts about, he's there at practice and this and that and the other. How are you going to handle it because a lot of times the girls go and play basketball or whatever while the boys are playing here and it's on the same day. How are you going to handle that?
If I had an athletic trainer today, I would have that dilemma. I have a cross-country meet at Occoneechee State Park that's going on right now. I had a Wednesday afternoon football practice. I would love to have the problem of solving that.
But I
Answering
mean,
that question.
how would you?
Now,
What would
how
your-
would I? Because the athlete is being pushed to his maximum, I would probably pick the cross-country match today, or meet today, because every athlete there, the 4 schools there, they're working at their, they're pushing to their limits. But it would also be part of that athletic trainer's job to sit down with the coaching staff, with the athletic director, and discuss and determine which one is a priority. That would probably also fall on the trainer in his professional opinion as to which one he should be at. I talked to an AD today about that exact situation. He said I would probably cover the cross country and have the athletic trainer with the ability to travel back to football practice. He's probably going to go back to football practice and do an evaluation of everybody after the practice anyway. But that is a very likely scenario. I didn't talk to anybody who had more than one trainer.
I mean, I'm just wondering, like, if you have a soccer game here, a boys soccer game here and a girls soccer game here,
If
one's
we
away,
have,
one's here, how are you gonna,
in the spring of the year, we would be faced with the situation of a baseball
or
game
basketball?
at the top and a softball game on the bottom field. Obviously,
He
you
could
can't
be-
watch both of them at one time, but you can serve both. Basketball or football away, every school doesn't have a trainer, but we're getting to the point that just about everybody does. We're going to cover our home events first, most likely. It's unlikely that we would have a conflicting contest with a football game on Friday night. We seldom, if ever, schedule anything because that means people don't go to the game and don't pay to come in. So we're going to cover that away football game probably with both trainers. The other thing there is they're going to have a trainer on their side working. We're going to have one on their side, and there's a big difference between moving back and forth. In a gym where something is going on, one trainer has a duty to and will serve both teams. Our trainer would help opponents. We had Alta Vista here 2 weeks ago in a scrimmage. Their trainer helped our people.
It's hard for me to see, how many are using the full-time, like a teacher salary? We were looking at adding 2 teacher salaries to our budget, it's already in place. So how many of these are using the contracting by game, and how many are having the full-time?
Of
I
the,
didn't know even that was, when we talked about this before, at the budget cycle, I didn't even know that contracting hourly was even an option.
when I brought this to you before, basically that is all I presented to you was the contract.
No, I'm talking about at the beginning of the budget cycle. I didn't say it, I thought it was a full-time athletic director position.
We have the full-time athletic director.
Athletic director we have.
I mean.
Well, athletic trainer. When the first time I have talked to you, this board about this was the last meeting.
We have talked about an athletic trainer as a hard position, not what he was brought to us last
We never
meeting.
talked about the hourly before.
No,
So,
that's something new.
How many are using hourly and how many are using full-time? Because two full-time teachers, with a budget that's already been set, is going to be a little difficult. So how many of these are full-time teachers and how many are on hourly rate?
The Region 8 one, I can give you the answer to there, where it says, do they teach? No, yes, no.
Looks like more.
Prince Edward teaches one class. Appomattox was yes, they teach. Nottoway is contract. Cumberland will be contract. Charlotte, they have 3 seasonal stipends. It's not a teacher, but it is a coach. And while we're there, I'll throw this out there. That's a conflicting situation, in my opinion, that they're putting their athletic trainer coach in, because the coach and the trainer can't make the same decision all the time. So I don't like that at all. I do not have the data from the Region 2A East on that. That was, like I said, a very,
Looks like more of the contract.
in Region 8 they are, and that is basically because of what I told you last time. This lady came to us and said, I'm putting this company together. And since then, I talked to her, and I said, we may be looking at the possibility of a full-time trainer. She says, it doesn't matter to me. If you put me out of business hiring full-time trainers, my goal has been achieved. I want a trainer in every high school in this state because they're needed. That was her comment to me.
The contract trainer, though, they're only going to show up at the game. They're not going to be there at the practices. They're not going to be able to follow up, and you're not guaranteed that you have the same
They will.
trainer at each game, so
That's
they're not
correct.
going to know the students. Is that correct?
Well, you can do it at an hourly rate for what you want to do. She will locate us a trainer somewhere within 2 hours, and you're going to pay $40 an hour for her services. And the scenario that I gave you last time was, and it was on the high range of what you would ask for. It was, middle school, high school, all games, home and away football.
It's called outsourcing, isn't it?
I'm sorry?
It's kind of like called an outsourcing.
Yes, sir.
So we're talking about less than $100,000 for two trainers with benefits. We're going to pay them benefits, they'll be on our regular payroll, just like a teacher,
I would hope so.
I would think. So we're talking about less than $100,000, right? Well, the company that they're working for says they're in business to make money, so they're making money.
The number that we got from Mr. Surf was 40,000 plus benefits brings it to 60, at least 120. I think that's low.
I want to say the average, my research, the average salary was $41,000.
Okay. And benefits are what, about 30%? Okay, so that's 52, that's 104. The thing I look at is, can we find $104,000 to maybe save a kid's life sometime during this year? We found $100 and some thousand to do things like, and Synergenics has been in my craw a long time, to do things like that wasn't any problem. We voted on that the first night. All right, let's go with that. By the way, are we keeping, real quick to get back to the budget, are we keeping the employee in Synergenics that's going to walk around and, well, you got the budget, it should be in there, huh? I'm just, okay, so Mr. Tucker doesn't have it, so there's another $25,000.
He may have a contract, I don't get his contract.
He does have a contract. I didn't see that come across our desk, did it?
It's just year to year.
Pardon?
It is year-to-year contract.
Don't we have to approve, we don't have to approve it.
We approved it, it would have rolled over in the budget and would have been approved in the budget.
So in other words, we just hide things in the budget, they just roll over every year. We read the
I
budget.
don't think
If
it's
we-
hidden, I think it's in
I thought when
the,
you had employees, you had to vote on them every year. Well, I can find that 25,000 at the next meeting.
I think it's, we all are getting a little carried away here, though, but the basic thing is, yes, of course, we want rescue squads there to save lives. As far as 2 teachers, I think it would not be prudent of us to vote on hiring 2 full-time people, not even knowing whether it's in the budget or not. I think we need to wait to the next budget cycle and put these positions into the budget. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make any sense to just do it full-time, vote on 2 positions when you don't even know, it's not in the budget. It should be waited for the new budget cycle, is what we should do.
So you're saying wait until next year?
Yes, the new budget, because I couldn't have a rescue squad to save lives at the beginning.
Why couldn't we recommend that Dr. Crawley make a recommendation or ask the
It's
Board
up
of
for a vote.
Supervisors?
It's up for a vote tonight. We'll see which way it goes. I mean,
right.
that's,
Okay.
Chairman, okay. I want to thank Mr. Crowder for coming tonight. Bringing this family forward is long overdue. You're correct, there is a difference between a rescue squad and an athletic trainer. 2 separate things, and I don't want to combine those 2. Mr. Crowder pointed out that with rescue squads, there may be a fee. But what we're here tonight, what we're talking about now is an athletic trainer. There's no reason that this board should not vote and approve for the 2 athletic trainers tonight. Not only are they there for the games, they're there for practice of all sports.
we can do that during discussion.
Okay, but
We don't need to hold him up. I mean,
that's what was happening a few
yeah.
minutes
I mean,
ago when we
we've
were talking
got-
about
I know,
cost.
but we need to move on with the agenda, so once we have the
Thank you,
motion
Ms.
in the
Crowder.
second, when we have the motion in the second, then please bring all of that up.
May I add one thing, please? Mr. Crowder?
Yes, sir.
I did a little research on my own, and that teacher that comes in, the athletic trainer, could he or she not carry on a class and then test their students at the end of the maybe semester or so? And if those seniors, I'm thinking of seniors, another school that I was privileged to, test the seniors, and if they qualify, they could help out, like if you had baseball on one field and soccer on another, could that individual, if trained or HAPS back up, if certified, could that individual help us there?
They can assist the athletic trainer in some duties. They cannot be a certified athletic trainer without a bachelor's degree. But they can work, as a matter of fact, with the team that was here from Alta Vista. She brought 3 students in with her. She had them assisting in various ways, but at a limited pace.
Okay. Thank you for bringing the information forward, Mr. Crowder. I know you had a long day having to drive back from the meeting. Okay. Next on the agenda is the Honeywell presentation. You will present information regarding the roofing, the ventilation, and the windows, and then answer questions and concerns from the school board members. Take it away.
Thank you. Good evening, Dr. Crawley and Madam Chair and school board members. Appreciate the opportunity to come before you tonight. For those of you who haven't met me before, I think most of you have, I'm Wayne Verland. I'm the general manager for Honeywell in Virginia, North Carolina. And so we're here tonight to share some information with you. As you realize, Honeywell's been working with the administration here for several months, developing an energy savings performance contracting program. And so tonight we want to share some information with you about that. There are a couple of key areas that have been brought up, like roofs and ventilation in classrooms and windows, that specifically we want to talk about tonight. And we need some, while we don't have anything on the agenda here to ask for action, quite frankly, we really need some direction and some feedback from you, and hopefully we'll have some dialogue tonight, okay? So the topics for discussion tonight are roof repairs here in Mecklenburg County Schools, and then the energy savings performance contracting, which is really around window replacement and heating, ventilating, air conditioning, or really ventilation in the classrooms, okay? I've broken out those 2 items specifically because you may say, why is Honeywell here talking about roofs? I want to give you a little background on that so people would understand that. In working with the administration here on the energy performance contract and doing surveys of the schools and doing the technical energy audit, discussion came up about the administration has been struggling with roof repairs here for quite a while, actually. And so while they had a lot of opinions from contractors about how you might solve the problems, most of those contractors were biased in some way because they represent a particular type of roof. And so I told the folks here that we have a independent roofing consultant I work with who's done a fantastic job. He's well qualified in the subject of roofs. He's unbiased when it comes to a particular product because he's not aligned with any manufacturer or contractor, and he's an honest guy and has done a great job for us. So I said, let me bring him in and give you an independent report, and that's kind of how it got started. So the roofing is not really part of the energy performance contract at all. I have worked with this consultant at other places because some other school districts have put roofs in a performance contract. We have not proposed that here, and are not proposing that tonight. But I just want you to understand how I got involved with a roofing consultant, come to talk to you about roofs. It's not really tied to an energy performance contract, okay? So Rob Moore, who's an independent roofing consultant, I'm going to have him come up first and kind of walk through. He's done an inspection report of all of your schools now. So he's going to walk through some of the feedback. He's got the printed copies of the reports he'll give to all of you. Take with you because it's a lot to digest. You won't be able to digest it sitting here. He will cover some highlights, a few slides and discussions, kind of what are the findings, summary of the findings, what are the recommendations, what's the potential investment to implement these things. So I'm going to turn it over to him if that's okay. Rob?
Good evening. My name is Rob Moore. The name of my company is Metal Roof and Building Consultants. I am an independent consultant. I work with roofing and waterproofing on buildings all over the Commonwealth. I've been a past president of Construction Specifications Institute in Washington, D.C. I'm also involved with that local chapter in Richmond. I'm also a past chair of the Building Enclosure Council in Washington, D.C., and the current chair of the Building Enclosure Council here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. What I do is I work with school boards, I work with counties, I work with private owners, I work with mostly commercial type buildings, working with low slope or metal roofing or any kind of shingle with slope. I do a lot of waterproofing when it comes to brick or whatever you may have on the exterior of your walls. I am completely independent. I work for no manufacturer, I work for no contracting company. I do have relationships with a lot of manufacturers and contracting companies, so I can make suggestions, recommendations, and I can direct you if you have questions. So that's kind of what I bring to the table as an independent. I've been in this business for a number of years. I'm originally from North Jersey. I've been in Atlanta and now here in the Richmond areas where we've settled. We've recently completed a very nice project up at Prince Edward County. They did it under their performance contract, but it's incredibly successful, and we presented to them this morning. They were very happy with what we were able to accomplish there. What we try to do with these type of programs is make sure, because I'm independent, I'm able to keep everybody in communication. I work with the contractors, that they're always communicating with the manufacturers, that they're always communicating with your facilities department, so that everyone knows everything that's happening. And as we work together and proceed, we have successful projects. And that is what I kind of bring to the table. So not to waste any time, since I did a presentation a few weeks back to just the committee, and at that time I had not looked at La Crosse or Chase City Elementary School. I've since gone back and looked at both of those schools, and they're in the back of the report. But you have three different type of roof systems essentially on the schools here. You have standing seam metal, low slope modified, which is tar paper, I suppose some folks would say, and a low slope single ply, which is a PVC type of product. I believe Trocal is the name that's been thrown around. Clarksville Elementary has a combination of both the standing seam and the single ply, and Parkview High has a low slope single ply, but up on the high roof it also has a spray polyurethane foam product. Most of these schools, actually all of these schools, have two roofs on the building right now. The original construction had a built-up roof with tar and gravel. And when they were retrofit, instead of pulling that off because of the type of decking you have, it's very difficult to do that, they were retrofit with new roof systems. And they're at varying stages of life right now, and that is mostly why you have some of the issues that you do have. Now, these aren't labeled, so I'm just going to go by memory. The one on the top left is Clarksville. That's where we have a metal roof on the left-hand side and the Trocal roof on the right-hand side. South Hill Elementary will be on the right-hand side, on the top. The bottom left, I believe, is Chase City, and the bottom right, I believe, is La Crosse. These are the four that have metal, standing seam metal existing. Now, each of these roofs have different examples of issues that they're dealing with. The leaks that are happening on, well, we talked about Clarksville. The leaks that are happening at Clarksville are at a hip over the top, over the area of the main entrance. That can be repaired pretty easily, and we discussed that, and there's budget figures in there for that as well. On the bottom two, on La Crosse and on Chase City, most of the issues that we're having there are at joints or at seam where the two panels come together, joint seams, that haven't been repaired correctly. There are issues over the years, and they just haven't been repaired correctly. So we need to have effective using the correct materials to go back. You could probably stop the leaks with that. I was asked at one point during this process to give you a long-term concept of what we can do to not only dry them in, but keep them dry for about 20 years. And I did present a silicone coating option, which is on there. Please keep in mind that all of the figures that I have are budget figures. None of them are hard numbers, and they are inflated for a reason, because I don't know when we're going to be doing the projects, and I just want to make sure you don't have to go back and find more money later on. I'm not bidding the job. I'm not trying to come in at a low number. I'd rather give you a high number, and then we try to fit into that. These roof systems, the top two are Parkview schools. They are with the single ply, the Trocal. On the right is the middle school. The middle school, one of the biggest issues you have there is that there's just not enough drainage. There's ponds all over that roof, and there's just not enough drains. I'm not quite sure why it was designed that way. And I'll tell you the truth, what we see a lot of times when we open up these roofs is that there's drains underneath, and perhaps when they were retrofit, they just went over the top of them, which is quite possible. But that's the situation you have there. In the bottom are Bluestone, middle and high school. Both of those schools have a modified roof over the top, and they are just at the end of their useful life. And that's pretty much what you're looking at with the secondary, with the middle and high schools, is that they're at the end of their useful life, and it is time, you can continue to make repairs, but you're chasing a demon. Really, it's time to do something up there to make those watertight, if you so choose. This is some shots from Bluestone High School. Some of the issues that are there right now, primarily there's some maintenance issues. We need to keep those a little bit cleaner. You have a lot of overgrowth from the trees around the perimeter, and as they set up there, they get into the drains, they clog the drains, and then the drains aren't able to work, and water backs up onto the systems. When it backs up onto the systems, it directly affects not only the roofing membrane, not only does it increase the UV rays that comes and really magnifies onto the membrane, but also it affects all of the metal that's in existence. It makes it more rusty, and it makes it start to degrade quicker. On the bottom right-hand side, on the high school, you also have an area where there is some Trocal. I didn't mention that earlier. And that was installed directly over a gravel roof that the gravel was not even removed, which is, that's an error in installation. Here's some more shots from Parkview High School. Now, Parkview High School, other than the obvious ponding water that you see. Now, ponding water, just so everyone, just to clarify the term, ponding water is water that is sitting on a roof more than 48 hours after a recent event, rain event. So this is water that's sitting there more than 48 hours after a rain event. You'll see on the bottom left-hand side there's some rust, some oxidation on these vents. A lot of that not only has to do with the water, but the fact that your oil burners, your existing oil burning heat is giving off a residue, and that residue has become detrimental not only to the roof system, but to the components of the roof system. And then on the right, those are, actually the same picture twice, but that's spray polyurethane foam up on the high area. The problem, one of the biggest problems with polyurethane foam is that when there's a hole, you have to fix it with foam, and a lot of folks that aren't roofers or foam roofers don't realize that, and they try to use other materials to try to stop the water, and it doesn't fit, it doesn't work. It fails rather quickly. So on the middle schools and high schools, what I had recommended, and you'll see in the report, is that we do an infrared roof scan to see exactly how much is wet. Because if it's a smaller amount that's wet, it may be in your best interest just to cut the wet out and to fix that and then go over it with a coating and buy yourself some time instead of having to do an entire roof right now. If a significant amount of the roof is wet, the insulation being wet, then it is a better bet to just go ahead and pull it off and put down a new roof system. The way an infrared scan works is we go up in the evening. See, UV rays, when they hit the roof, I know this isn't exciting, I'm trying here. This is not the most exciting thing, it's exciting to me. But UV rays, when they hit a roof, the roof absorbs that heat all day long. And then in the evening, when the sun goes down, the roof, it lets that heat back out. In a dry roof, it lets it out rather quickly. In wet spots on a roof, it holds onto that heat a bit longer and it releases it much slower. So we go in with an infrared camera and we're able to see where that moisture still is. That heat is being released a little bit slower, and that's how we're able to detect where wet spots are on a roof. We make a mark. We see that number 1, we'll make a mark, find out where the wet spot is. We typically cut a hole. We use a moisture indicator to find out how wet it is, and then we come back with a plan that has your entire roof plan, tells you how much is wet, and then the decision is yours. This is an application of a silicone material. This is what it looks like if, for instance, those Trocal roofs are as dry as I hope they are. Being able to go back and just do some minor repairs and put down a coating. This is what it would look like, and it would buy you, depending on the thickness, it would buy you a 10-year warranty and keep you dry. This is what it would look like, a silicone on metal. Now, going back to the metal roofs, not only are simple repairs easy to do to get you dry right now, but if we're going to do a long-lasting solution, going back with a coating would be helpful, and this is what it would look like. A silicone coating would go back without needing any kind of a primer. What we would do first is clean the roof really, really well and be able to apply a silicone coating to it. And that would extend the life of the metal roof. The silicone is pliable enough that it moves with the roof as it expands and contracts, and it's a nice solution. And there's a number of manufacturers that provide that. This is my pricing page, my summary page, and again, keep in mind these are budget figures. It shows what each of the schools would be, the capital outlay being replacement, and the maintenance options are on the left-hand side. Now, also on Clarksville Elementary, there was another option that we had proposed to, at the Trocal roof, the low-slope roof, to go back and build some slope into it and put metal panels on. And I have some numbers in there for you, too. I didn't mark them as recommended, so those numbers aren't on this summary sheet, but they are in the reports that you have in your hand. And I'll take any questions. Sir?
Maybe this isn't a question for you. Nobody has fixed Clarksville Elementary School yet.
No one has told me they have. I don't know.
We had an estimate of $3,500. Do we still have that?
Understand we do, but she didn't have a problem with that.
I didn't have a problem with it.
Well, this is an estimate of the person that was consulting. I'm not sure where the estimate.
I think we have a bid, estimate of $3,500 for that roof and $19,000 or $19,000 for Southdale Elementary School. And that Mrs. Tuck brought to us a while back before we ever met him. Oh, she got hers from him.
I don't think it was a bid, I think it was an estimate. She's brought you an estimate of what the cost would be. It has not been bid out at this time.
I had asked Mr. Price to please go in and see if there's anything he can do to stop gap right now, and then we would work on calls and contacts. That's where we're going.
Any more questions? For Mr. Morris? Or Mr. Moore, excuse me.
I think, I know you know what you do, and I believe you. We just need time to absorb this. We were talking a few minutes ago about a budget item trying to find $100,000. Knows that's time $4 million. this. I think it's something we need to really think about what we're going to do. Plus that, we're looking at possibilities of building new schools and abandoning schools and things like this. And we have to touch base with our funding sources, who happens to be the taxpayers of Mecklenburg County. And that all comes to our board of supervisors, so we have to do our due diligence, and this really helps. We have to find out what, I think the next step is for us to find out which schools we're going to keep, which schools we're not going to keep, and then you patch the ones we're not going to keep, and you fix the ones we are going to keep, and that's all common sense. Will you agree?
I appreciate that, absolutely, yeah.
That's all we can do at this point.
And just so you know, my intent is to bring this to you as just to let you know what you have, to lay it out in front of you so that you know what you have. I'm available to you. I've been on the roofs. It's been my pleasure to help you out in any way I can. If I can help you, if you need to make a phone call, I'm always available. And that's kind of, sure. And if there's any way I can be of assistance, let me know. Thank you.
And this is something that we'll take to the committee. Of course, we have to make some decisions about it too, but we need to take this to the education committee. And the roof, there's a separate roof fund, if I'm not mistaken, that is in place to make repairs and things like that. So I don't think we have to go out and find that, you know, unless we're going to do the whole big package. But I'm saying if, you know, once we decide what roofs we're going to take care of, there is a fund that's in place that's separate, that's for the roof.
And what I can do too, just I can offer to you as well, is when you have when you're ready to make one of those repairs, or when you're ready to do something with that, if you need me to help prepare a scope or to do the inspections, that's what I do. I go up and make sure that the work gets done correctly. I work for you to make sure that I'm your eyes on the roof. I take a lot of pictures, I do reports, I put them online if necessary, so that you can always be in tune with what we're doing. On the schools that we just did in Prince Edward, we had a blog that we updated weekly that had photographs and basically explained everything that we did every step of the way, so that the board was able to stay clean, but keep an eye on what was happening up on the rooftop. So anything that we can do.
My suggestion to the board, somebody wants to.
I want to ask about the foam.
Sorry?
The foam that you were talking about.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
You just go in and spray it on top of the roof that are already there?
Yeah, spray polyurethane foam is it's an interesting roof. It's foam like when you see sometimes in your home they spray foam as an insulation. It's a similar type of material, only what happens is when it sets up, it develops this film over the top of it, which is a waterproofing film. And yeah, what they do is at the correct rate, making sure that they use the right ratios, I'm Italian, so I use my hands a lot. So they spray it at the correct rate, and when it sets up, as I said, it becomes waterproof. Also, it has an insulative quality. But what happens is if there is a breach in the membrane, if there's a breach in that film, it has to be repaired with foam or with some type of urethane. You can't go back with asphalt or some other kind of product because it doesn't adhere correctly, and over time, with the expansion and contraction of the material, it does break away, and then it doesn't keep your waterproof any longer. But that's what it is. It is a spray, just kind of, and the roof that's existing, as long as you only have one roof system on. If you have two roof systems, you can't go back with foam because that would be considered a third, and that's against code. So if you have one on already, you can go right over the top of that.
And I have a question. You were talking about putting the silicone, that
ma'am.
was one of the options, but you made some comment about as long as it wasn't wet under there. So let's say that it was, some of the roofs were really wet.
Mm-hmm.
Would that still be an option, or is it, we would have to go in and eradicate that first and then do this?
You'd have to eradicate that.
Okay,
You want
so
to
that
cut
could
that
be,
out.
that would probably be an incident where you probably want to do something more than just the silicone.
Not necessarily. Well, yeah, you would
If it was
pull the wet
thick.
out, you could replace it with dry material, and then you could put silicone down over
But
the
if
top
it's a
of the whole
large
thing.
area,
Well, that's where the infrared scan
Scan
comes
would
in.
tell
That's
us.
where you kind of determine how much is wet and how much is dry.
Okay.
If it's, we'll figure out what that point is, what your sweet spot is, whereas if it's that wet, then we have to replace it. But if it's not, then we can replace just those certain areas and go over with material.
and I haven't had a chance to look over this, how many, is silicone an option for all of them, or just for, did you have just for certain ones?
The silicone is an option for where you have metal roofing or where you have single ply roofing.
Okay.
On the areas that you have modified, I've proposed an option if the roofs are dry, again, that's a key factor. If the roofs are significantly dry, going back with it's an asphaltic coating, essentially. It's a coating of asphalt that would go over, and you would flood coat it It would fill in all the voids and cracks. You still have to redo all of the flashings and redo all of the projections, but then you'd be able to go back with an asphaltic coating. And you can illuminize that to increase reflectivity and help your HVAC cost.
And the places that we have the puddling, they would be able to take care of that with the silicone or the foam or?
No, that wouldn't do that.
That's
With the silicone has been designed to withstand ponding water.
So for the puddling, what is it that we'd have to do for the roofs that have the puddling?
The right thing to do is to pull those off and go back and install tapered insulation, make sure we have enough drains, add drains if we need to. It's really a true roof renovation at that point. Ma'am?
You mentioned that you drilled a hole or made a hole. You did fix that, right?
Yeah, we fixed that. We took good care of that.
So old. anything
Yeah.
can happen.
No, what we did was we cut a core. The core cut, the reason we do that is so we understand what you have as far as the roof system is concerned. That's how we know you have two roof systems on there already. We can't just put another one over the top of it, any of them, really. But yeah, we did cut a core, but I have plenty of material to fill that in and keep you dry. Okay. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
So in closing that out, like I said, I'm not here to repair roofs. We facilitate to bring the information to you. I would recommend to you that at some point you figure out how to maybe get someone like him under contract as your roofing consultant, right? At this point, he's worked for me and I paid him, but at some point, if you want him to come to meetings and develop RFPs for you, he ought to be under contract to you, right? So you can tell him what the deliverables are and what you expect, and you would have a working relationship with him as opposed to through me. So I throw that out to you. Then decide on what kind of roof repairs you've got to do, right? You've got a lot of options, and I think Rob's done a nice job of looking at secondary schools, understanding you're not going to be in there a long time, so what's a short-term solution? Whereas elementary schools, a more long-term solution, right? Take care of those roofs. And you got some places today that you need to fix right now, right? Some places that you can't use part of the building when it rains. That's my opinion. I can't wait for a budget. I got to go fix those kind of things, right? And then the bigger picture, you got to think about how you do that, whether it's a roofing fund or not, and then decide on how you procure it once you go do that. A lot of variables there, right? So I highly recommend someone like Rob. Rob's done a great job for us, and the real value is not only helping define it up front, doing the inspection, understanding what the solution is, but the ongoing verifying that the contractor does it correctly. Because some other roofs we just work with, once you pull the old roof off, you found that the one under it was done wrong, right? And so that's why it's been leaking. And so if you just bring a contractor in and nobody oversees them and let them do what they want to do, you'll probably live the same problem. And you got some of those problems today at South Hill, right? You knew a school, you got roof problems. Shouldn't have that. So I'll get off that, but you need to figure out what you all want to do there. We'll help any way we can. I want to talk a little bit about performance contracting and specifically around window replacement and ventilation in the classrooms. But I want to spend just a minute, if you don't mind. I know you've seen this slide or two or three of these before. I just want to hit some key bullets, and I'm going to go right past them, right? But when I talk about energy savings performance contracting, that really is about taking money you're already spending and reallocating it to capital improvements. That's what it's about. Now, we're getting into some areas that are capital intensive, like window replacements and potentially ventilation, that is so capital intensive, you don't have enough utility spend here to fund that, right? So in those cases, you got to decide, do I want to go do something different, or do I just want to stay with a self-funded program? But energy performance contracting in its purest sense is taking existing funds you're giving to the utility company and reallocating them to capital improvements. That's what it is, okay? So you're not asking to spend any more money from anybody. You're taking money you're already spending. And if you don't do anything in a performance contract, you will keep spending it. But you're not going to get any improvements in your buildings, right? So that's the essence of performance contract. Everybody understand that? You've probably heard that several times by now. The other beauty of it is, quite frankly, it's kind of a side benefit of performance contracting. It allows you, it's a performance-based contracting, right? So it allows you to get a better quality product, in my opinion. And I've been doing this a long time, right? I've been in this market with this company for 35 years doing this kind of work. So I've seen the traditional construction, design, bid. I've lived that too, right? It's this model we've lived for 100 years. But I can tell you this methodology here, approach, you get a better quality product because you get a team that's working with a common goal, and that's really delivering a product that'll last for the long term and improve the learning environment. That's what it's about. So many customers I work with aren't familiar with this, so they're always thinking about a project-based kind of approach, which is get somebody to design it, bid it out, right, and deal with the contractor. And then, it's a cat and mouse game between the two. It's never a good relationship, quite frankly, right? Because the contractor's trying to get out of there as quickly as he can. The owner's got to live with it for the next 40 years. And you're living with the result of some of that, quite frankly, here. So that's a side element of it, doing something under performance contract, and really why this other district he was just talking about did the roofs under it. Because they said, I want you to run it. I want to make sure these roofs work for the next 40 years. And so that's why we did it. And I brought him into the mix because I'm not a roof guy. I'll just tell you right up front, right? So when they started talking about roofs, it scared me to death. I said, I'm going to bring somebody who knows what they're doing, and I brought Robbie, and he's done a fantastic job. So when you look at energy performance contract, why are you doing it? You're doing it for the same reason most other public K-12 across the state and across the country are doing it, right? Because there's a lot of pressure on budgets. There's not a lot of capital funding laying around for people to give you. Costs are going up, utility costs are going up, and you got aging facilities. That all resonates right here in Mecklenburg. It does in most other places, and we do this type of work in a lot of other public K through 12. The basis of approach here at Mecklenburg has been the elementary schools will be in for a long time, so try to take a more of a systems, a holistic approach to those, because we're going to be there for a while. The secondary schools really were not even part of the performance contract when we did the back of the envelope. They weren't part of the scope of that. But later, we were asked to look at those and say, are there any low-hanging energy conservation measures that we can do there? Say we'll be there 10 years, that'll generate some cash that'll help us go do improvements in the elementary schools. So that's kind of the approach we took, not to spend a lot of money in those schools, but look for ways that we could save some money that we could apply somewhere else. And at the end of the day, it's about focusing on children. That's what we heard here, and quite frankly, that's what we're all about. Our job is to help public K through 12 improve the learning environment. That's why I'm here. If I didn't think you needed me to help you do that, I wouldn't be here, quite frankly. I'm not here to do a deal because I don't need to do a deal. I've been doing this a long time. There's a lot of public K through 12 customers out there who need help. So if someone doesn't want to help them, I say, fine, we won't help. But we're pretty good at doing this, and what the personal satisfaction I get out of it is when I go into, I've been in school districts where people really said, they'll never improve these schools. I've had contractors in the community tell me that, not this community, others, right? People working in the schools tell me that, and at the end of the day, when we can turn all that around and get everybody on the same page, focusing on the children, which is all about, and get stuff done and improve the morale and people get a smile, that's what I get excited about. I could care less about the $1.5 million job or whatever it is we do here. The last part is self-funding or capital infusion. That's still a question, right? It was put together, the preliminary back of the envelope was put together as a self-funding program. So you're taking existing operating dollars and applying those to capital improvements. There's some question around, do we want to do any capital infusion or not, some other money to do more capital-intensive things. This is where you are in the process, right? You made the decision almost a year ago. September, you put out a solicitation last year. Went through the process, had 7 companies come to the kickoff meeting, I think, Donna, and 3 of them, I think, responded, and ultimately you selected someone back in March, so we've spent 6 months, right, after getting the technical energy audit and then doing some of these surveys we're doing today. And we need some direction at this point. That's why I'm coming to you. It's taken longer than it should. Typically, these kind of deals, in fact, I think your technical energy audit that we signed with you probably has a completion date of yesterday to bring you back a final audit. And we're still working our way through these workshops, so we need to make some progress. We have some turnover personnel here, as you know. That's why I'm going to ask you help there in a minute. We go through a whole series of workshops. Not going to talk about all those, but this really is a collaborative process when we work with a customer. It's not an iterative process. It isn't I go off and develop a program and bring it back to you, and you ask me a lot of questions, tell me to go do it again. That's not the way this works. We bring people in, subject matter experts to understand buildings. They have a lot of experience doing this in other schools, so they're learning best practices going there. We need people from the school district to participate that have some understanding of the operations of the schools. They understand the history here. They understand, quite frankly, the personalities and politics. So that's always in place in every public entity we go into, right? That says we tried that 10 years ago, it didn't work. And the guy that tried it maybe is still sitting on the board of supervisors and he remembers it. you need to know that stuff, right? Someone coming in doesn't know that. People that live here know that. So that's why people that are part of Mecklenburg schools help, I think, develop the program and put together a recommendation to bring back to the board, school board first, and then ultimately to the board of supervisors. So here's with a list of capital improvements. As you put these programs together, there's capital improvements I want to get done. We got a lot of aged HVAC equipment here, heating, ventilating, air conditioning. I use that acronym, heating, ventilating, air conditioning equipment. Got a boiler replacement in Chase City. We got a lot of repair and recommission in several of the schools that were part of this self-funding approach. Then we had some things that are needed, quite frankly, energy recovery ventilation units. I'll talk more about that in a minute, and windows that couldn't be self-funded. They take money to do them, so we went and took a look at those. And then you have to go find some savings measures. These are things that wouldn't be on your capital list, but these are things that generate a funding stream, right? I put in more efficient equipment and upgrade lighting and things like that, and those savings, utility savings, are what are used to fund the capital improvements on the first page, okay? So that's why you look at that and say, well, I didn't care about doing lighting and water conservation. You do those because it saves the utility spend to go do the capital improvements. It does give you side benefits of improved aesthetics, lighting quality. It gives you a lot of side benefit, but they probably wouldn't be on your critical list of things to get done in your buildings. Self-funded program we brought back to you initially. You've seen that before, was about $1.5 million. That was a 3% rate. So that was self-funding. Now, when you take a self-funding approach, it limits what you can do because you only have so much utility spend. Actually, I think the savings calculations we did here were almost 35% of your utility spend. That's pretty aggressive. But at the end of the day, you got X number of dollars for utility. You do the energy calculations. All the engineering team in the back office does that. And they say we can save this much money. And so that really determines the size of a project, right? Once you run it over 15 years and put an interest rate, it kind of tells you what you can afford. So the reason for our discussion tonight is really around windows and heating, ventilating, air conditioning. Window replacement was a requirement really of the energy performance contract. We came in here, that's one of the first things they told us they wanted to do, get windows replaced, right? So that's why we're looking at them. Inadequate ventilation was really a result of our back of the envelope surveys. When we got in your buildings and started taking readings, indoor air quality readings, you had some inconsistency, certainly in temperature in buildings, hot and cold spots, but more importantly, lack of ventilation, which meant your CO2 levels in classrooms in some cases were excessively high. Right? They were, yeah, at least twice. 25, I think one of the little pictures up there is 2600, which is at least twice what it should be, right? At 2,500, a lot of studies out there done. All you guys go Google it, you don't believe me, to look at academic performance in classrooms and also in office buildings and other places and CO2, right? A lot of studies done around that tells you when you get to 2,500, judgment, decision-making is significantly impaired and attention span is significantly decreased. So a lot of impact of that when you talk about academic performance. So we focus, when we talk about these subjects, it's really about three schools, right? Chase City, Clarksville, and La Crosse. They're the elementary schools you will be in for a while. They're pretty much the same vintage schools. You've got aged and some inefficient windows right there. Probably the original equipment there. Split system air conditioning was added later. You can see them all along the front of the building, the condensing units there. Insufficient ventilation in the classroom, and it's, you know, if you're concerned about curb appeal, they're probably not very pretty really to look at. So when you get into the window discussion first, as I said, it really was an initial requirement of Mecklenburg schools when we went through this process, say, hey, we want to replace windows. I think you all had been talking about that for a while. Existing windows are original. They're steel, single glazed, non-insulating type, you know, glass. A lot of transmission of heat and cold through those windows, right? Single pane. If you ever lived in a house got single pane windows, you understand what that means about drafts and transmission of either hot air or cold air, depending if you're heating and cooling season, through the window outside. Air infiltration, a lot of drafts and loss of energy there. So you can see a couple of pictures there. Your school's La Crosse and one from the inside here at Chase City. Same type, really, construction. So some options you would have if you want to replace those are the simplest, right? Really doesn't cost you much money, is caulk and seal them. If I don't want to replace the window, if I say I can live with what I've got, I just want to seal the cracks up, I can do that, right? That was actually part of our preliminary back of the envelope. It was a self-funded measure as part of the building envelope to seal, caulk those windows, right, to at least keep air from blowing in them. It doesn't help the fact that it's single pane window and all the other problems you got with them. A second option would be you could replace the windows, but maybe only pick the high visibility areas. Don't do the whole school if you want to save money, right? One place is say, I want all the benefits, but I also want it to look nice, right? People, new industry comes to town, they drive down the street, look at my school, I like it to look nice. We have schools that have done that, right? A nonprofit that would say, I at least want to make them look nice on the front. So that's one option. You can replace only high visibility areas. The other is replace all the windows. And I'll cover that in a little more detail in just a minute. So the obvious benefits, right? The insulation of the envelope, when you put in a thermal break, dual glass window, right, with commercial insulating glass, and I mean, it's just no difference, right, between those two from what you got and what you could put in there. Storefront, aluminum storefront type thermal break window installation, okay? It reduces transmission of UV light. You could tint them if you want to. It certainly improves aesthetics and it improves comfort because it cuts down on drafts and things like that in the room. So when I say high visibility areas, here's an example. Here's Chase City, Clarksville, Lacrosse. The yellow line would be those areas really that are exposed to where people park or roads are, that people would drive up to. So you'd say, hey, I want those areas to look nicer. I get on the inside of the building, the courtyard, maybe I don't care as much. So the other option would be replace them all the way around the building. So here's some budget numbers. This isn't a proposal. This is kind of a budget, give you order of magnitude what we're talking about. Replacing those high visibility areas, you're probably looking at almost $500,000, $480,000. It could be up from there a little bit or down from there a bit, right? That's a budget. I think that's probably a light budget compared to some places I've seen. I just looked at a report, quite frankly, at Pulaski County Schools, way out in Southwest Virginia, had 2 middle schools. They wanted to do this. They hired a consultant, so they spent a lot of money to go get this answer. Okay, you didn't have to do that. They spent a lot of money to go get them to give them a report to tell them the same thing, basically, I just told you. And their prices were higher than this. They were, I think, 16 a square or something, and this is probably at 95 a square, and once you do the math on it. So I'm not saying this is right, but I'm saying that's order of magnitude. If you did all the windows, it's probably twice that. So some questions that have to be answered really about windows is the scope of windows. But do you want to do it, or do you just want to seal up what you got, and that's good enough? Are you worried about actually replacing them? Do you want to do part of them or all of them? So at some point, we have to get some direction going forward. What do we want to do? A lot of other questions once you decide that around what are the finishes, right? I want white, I want bronze, and I want all those kind of things you got to talk about. What do I want it to look like? Do I want operable sections or not? You know, you got operable sections today, lower part of the window. Would be required by code. The fact you don't have any ventilation, that was the way you got ventilation, was to open windows, right? So these discussions are kind of tied together. If I put in a dedicated ventilation unit, I could put operable, or I could say I don't want operable. That's really up to you, okay? Operable windows, some people like that, right? Like at home, you want to open the window when it's cool in the fall. Also brings in a lot of pollen and pollutants and all other kind of stuff. So, but these are all user decisions. They're not things that I can tell you what to do here, okay? So we'll need your input at some point on that. So any thoughts about this? I've been doing all the talking. I mean, Glenn, you all did some of this discussion a number of years ago. I don't know what the thought was there, but maybe you can help us a bit.
In fact, they were actually asking us down here, and that would be to replace the windows in all 3 elementary schools totally, not paint. You know, replacing the front windows makes no sense. I mean, we're doing this for the comfort of the children and to save energy. So you have to replace all the windows to get that done, not the front windows to make it look good so that the taxpayers are happy for that. So it makes the teachers more comfortable, the children more comfortable, and make a better learning environment. So you need to do all the windows. I would suggest going back to the hopper window that would open. And the reason for that is when you have, if we're going to go back and do large system air conditioning and these things, there's sectioned off. So if one goes down, you can open a window, still get air, and use your classroom, rather have to abandon the classroom. Just my idea.
Okay.
It's also an escape hatch if you ever have to use it. Especially in elementary schools and small children.
Okay.
Just my observations, and that's the way everybody's looking at years ago, a few years ago.
Okay, it's all good feedback. That's the kind of feedback that we need as we put the program together, right? It tells us what your thinking is.
We did get one estimate when we were doing the additions. We were going to do all the windows too. I can't remember what the estimate was. For just the window.
Because if you do, you put the number on the street.
Oh, yeah, yeah. But anyway, that's what we intended to do, was do it all at the same time as the additions, but that didn't work out. But my feeling is the ventilation. I mean, if I was a parent and I knew that my kid was in rooms with, double the CO2 levels recommended, I would be knocking on everybody's door saying, we need good ventilation in our schools. Our kids will not, their learning's not affected. I think there should be an uproar among parents just knowing that our CO2 levels are too high in our schools.
That's a great segue into the next piece, right, about HVAC and ventilation, so thanks for helping me move right.
But I think basic code says that we have to have air exchange every 2 hours. If we put these windows in, it's going to tighten our schools up to the point we have to have an air exchange system.
Well, quite frankly, you're already supposed to have those,
I mean, we got an air exchange system now. Nobody's too. But,
I'm not sure that really, I'm not sure that meets the code to have leaking windows as your ventilation source, but anyway. It's, what you got today in those classrooms, for the most part, and you got 3 different vintages, right, in those 3. They were built in 3 different time periods, but for the most part, you got either hot water ventilating units in those rooms or electric heat that's served by a hot water either fired by a gas-fired or oil-fired boiler, right? It's kind of what you got in that room, and then you came back later and added these mini-split systems, air conditioning, gave you some cooling in those rooms with a condensing unit outside and the indoor wall-hung unit. So you all have seen all those in your class. That's what you got, right? And that's one of the CO2 readings. See there, 2,400 was one of them. So it's an example of what you got in those rooms. So what you got there today is really, you don't have much coordination in your temperature control. You got a heating system sitting there working and an independent cooling system. So it gets too hot in the building, someone takes a little remote and runs the cooling down on an air conditioner, so it's a waste of energy, quite frankly. You don't have a coordinated climate control system in those classrooms. And you got inadequate ventilation. When it was originally designed, it was probably to be ventilated through those units, and they're not. Those units aren't being run, certainly, in the winter. Those unit ventilators for heat, they were for heat. So you're not getting ventilation really introduced into that classroom other than through those leaks of the windows, Glenn, you said. So some options you could do there. The back of the envelope, which was a self-funding approach, it really was just to repair, replace, recommission that existing kind of equipment you got. It wasn't to put new systems in. You couldn't afford to do that. So really, it was more of what you've got. It may be a different manufacturer, but it's the same equipment, right? I've got some places that things are broke, they aren't working, need new ones. So they'd be repaired, replaced, recommissioned, you get new equipment. That was all self-funded. The next option would be install dedicated ventilation units. So I would say keep what I got, heating and cooling source like I've got it, and put in an energy recovery ventilation system that pumps ventilation into the space. It has to be ducted through the school. Brings ventilation in, it's energy recovery, so it has an exhaust system also, and you capture the heating or cooling on that, so it minimizes the energy required to condition that outside air when you bring it in, which is helpful, because generally when you ventilate, you're bringing in outside air, whether it's 95 degrees or 10 degrees, right? So you got to do something, you got to spend energy to condition it. So that's an option. Put in, keep what you got and put in dedicated ventilation units to get me ventilation into the room. That solves the CO2 problem. Another option would say, hey, I don't really like those, that heating system separate from cooling and all these condensing units sitting out front that aren't pretty. I could put in a variable refrigerant flow system. I'll show you a picture of one of those in a minute. And the last option would be put in air handling systems, right? Ground mounted, you wouldn't want to put them on the roof. Ground mounted units on the back of the building that actually heats, cools, and brings ventilation in. It's kind of a traditional model to conditioning a space. And then the benefits, obviously you get proper ventilation, you get improved comfort, you increase energy efficiency, and you improve aesthetics. So here's what we're looking at. Ventilation unit up there, you can see you warm air leaves, exhaust air, cold air comes in, you get some exchange there, so that's the energy recovery piece. But it's a dedicated unit that ventilates air that you pump into the space to get the CO2 out. that's some rough budgets of what it would cost for 3 schools, too, $650,000. You could put in air handling systems in a lower left there. You certainly wouldn't need one as big as that one that's being lowered right there. I think that's another project we did. But ground-mounted air handling units would certainly be an efficient way to get you heating, cooling, and ventilation. The downside of that, you'd probably have put in a unit that served 2 or 3 classrooms. So from a temperature control, you always got to fight over who gets control of it, right? I get the thermostat, or you get it, right? So you got that's a little bit of, could be the downside of the air handling system, unless you put in a variable air volume or something like that. And then the variable refrigerant flow is really where you put these units in each classroom, ceiling mounted kind of things here you see there in the middle right here that provide heating and cooling. And the refrigerant piping is all piped to the back side of the building where you put a condensing unit here, one that serves a bunch of rooms. So you don't put one condenser per unit sitting in the front of the building, right? You hide them in the back, gives you heating and cooling in the space. You'd still use a dedicated ventilation unit because those units won't provide outside air ventilation sufficient for a classroom. You can get them with a little small stuff on them, but you can't. So you'd still have this and that, but the two of those together is pretty pricey, as you can see. 2.4 million is probably some energy efficiency in this option over others. It's a good option, I mean, from an efficiency standpoint. You see a number of these going in new schools today. So you'd have some savings that offset the 2, 4, but maybe a couple $100,000. So it's still a major investment, $2 million to do that in 3 schools. So that's kind of the 3 options other than just repair, replace, repair, recommission what you got, which is already in a self-funded program. And again, these are just order of magnitude numbers. These aren't final proposals. We get equipment pricing, we contractors look at it, but it's preliminary kind of budget numbers. That's what this is, okay? At the end of the day, all of these items, when you build an energy program, would be a project, a program with a bunch of pieces to it, right? And a cash flow that says, I do this for 15 years, I'm going to offset part of the cost with utility savings. And if I do some of these capital intensive things, I've got to go find some other money to infuse to help me with this. I either infuse it today, I go to the Board of Supervisors, ask for money. That's probably not a popular thing to do. Certainly it's not going to be in the next 60 days. With the elections coming up, right? Nobody wants to talk about money right now. So that's one option, or you either fund it over time, which, you know, most fiscally conservative places would rather not do that if they don't have to. So any questions on this? But at the end of the day, you really ought to think about how I can get ventilation, or maybe not. It really comes down to the board, right? Because I go to a lot of places, and I operate in a lot of rural communities. I live in one rural community, you know. So there's a number of people who would say, I went to that school, I was successful in life, why do I need to change anything, right? That attitude's out there, so you might as well accept it, right? No sense hiding from that. Or there are other people who would say, just because I did it doesn't mean I shouldn't provide a better learning environment for people today who have to go in a competitive world when they leave school. But really, that's a decision for the board.
So, Wayne, to clarify what we would be asking for as far as funding, part of this is covered by what we're doing. Would be one of these choices and then the window.
I think what the Board of Supervisors has asked of us is to decide if they can't do both, which is the priority, which one do we want to do first, and which would be second? Do we want to do windows, or do we want to do ventilation? And I mean, let them know both of the costs, but then we need to prioritize which is our main goal. Do we want to do the windows first, or do we want to do the ventilation first?
So the rest of the stuff doesn't require funding.
Right. The preliminary back of the envelope we did was a self-funded program. So there's no impact to your operating budget or requirement for capital, quite frankly. But it doesn't get you all these nice long-term kind of, it gives you more of a repair, replace kind of mentality, not a holistic system approach like you may want to think about in elementary schools that you will be in maybe another 30 years. I don't know.
Which one would you recommend? Would you go with the windows or the ventilation?
I'm trying to think of how I can politely dodge that bullet you just sent to me.
I think if every elementary school parent knows you know, I mean, I think ventilation would have to be the priority if it's increased CO2 levels.
If it was my children and my,
Replace the windows and not do the ventilation. Legal,
I,
by code.
well, it would be at least the same thing you got today. It'd be an operable window which provides ventilation. The code allowed that at the time the schools were built, and it would be allowed today. If it were personally, you asked me the question, I'm obligated to answer it. I would seal the windows if it were me. It's part of the building envelope, seal it up so no air is blowing through it, right? And I'd put in a better ventilation system. Because I think if you want to look at really comfort in the building, you can do more with ventilation and heating and cooling systems to provide comfort in that building than you go get from those windows. But it's an internal thing, right? From a PR standpoint, the windows give you a little, they give you you see it, right? You see the improvement. You do it in the classroom. I'll put a unit somewhere in the back, run ductwork through the ceiling. Nobody sees that. But the end result, if you're focusing on the children, for the learning environment, that probably gives you more bang for your buck.
And their health, yeah, their health.
But that's
can
just
be
my
a-
opinion, and I recognize that's all it is.
All this information was sent to us today. This presentation is sent to us today.
We got this presentation. Yeah. Yeah. So here's what I'd say, though. We're not ready. I don't think you're ready to go ask the Board of Supervisors for any money, if you want my opinion. I think there's more development to be done on this. But what I'd ask of you is, how do we get more involvement from Mecklenburg County Schools to help finish what we've started here? Because I'd go on this list. You want to know what my recommendations are as I look at the situation we've got? I'd confirm first that this board is still committed to doing an energy program, right? You approved it a year ago, the process. You approved signing a technical energy audit. Are you really behind it or not? I'm not asking you to answer me that night. That's a rhetorical question, maybe. I want you to think about it. Does this board still support doing an energy program? Because quite frankly, if you said at the end of the day you thought about it and said, I don't know if I want to do it or not, I'd rather you just tell me. I can go somewhere else because there are a lot of other people who want to do it. Right? I'm here to help you. That's really why I'm here, to help you get it done. But if you don't want to do it, I'm not trying to sell it to you. We need to update the timeline for the technical energy audit because that's a contractual agreement that we signed, you signed and I signed, that said we'd do these deliverables by these dates, and those dates have all slid because we aren't getting these workshops completed. We need to revisit that TEA and put realistic timelines based on what this board thinks. When do we really want to get this done? When do we want to carry it to the Board of Supervisors? When do we want to start work? You may say, I'm not doing anything until we get through the election. I don't know. But you need to tell me that really, right? There's no sense me putting dates in that says I'm going to deliver something back to you in October if I can't get participation on your side to help me build it. And that's what I need from you. That's my ask tonight, is that we get participation from Mecklenburg School Board, not maybe specifically you, unless you're interested and want to participate, but from administration, others in the community, I don't care, but we need that participation. We ought to identify who with the schools is going to participate in the solution development. It doesn't mean it's the same people in every workshop. It may be people who are really committed to the ventilation piece and want to sit through that, and someone else that says, I want to talk to windows or lights or some other piece of it, right? But we need the active engagement. It's a collaborative process. Complete these workshops. They're not long. It's a matter of sitting around the table, taking information like this, asking questions, and making decisions, right? So out of those workshops, what you end up with is a recommendation to bring with some clarity. It says not a range of numbers from here to there. Here's what we recommend you should do. You bring that back to the full school board. Right? You decide if you want to do it, and then at some point you take it to the Board of Supervisors. But I think the approach we've been taking here is about, we get this long list of items and this wide range of numbers, and nobody can deal with that, right? So that's been a problem, quite frankly. Then complete the TEA based on the feedback we get from the school board and Board of Supervisor or Education Committee, however you want to approach that, and then finalize proposal for implementation. But we desperately need your participation to help us finish this thing. I'll put all the resources and people and energy engineers and folks you need here to get it done, but I need you to help me on your side.
So you're talking about additional cost other than what we've already voted on? Is that what we're talking about? Additional?
There's going to be no cost here.
I mean, additional projects.
No.
We're not adding anything. So we've already voted on it, right?
You've already voted on it. You've already said that you're behind this.
Okay.
Yes.
I think what he's talking about, the committee that goes to the workshops to ask the questions to decide what has to be done. And then we bring it back to the board, or somebody brings it back to the board.
That's correct. Generally, we would have, in these workshops, you'd have obviously facilities people from the schools, in many cases, depending on what their capability is. You'd have folks involved from the facilities that understand how they operate facilities. You may have people from administration. Many times we have people from the school board, right? Sometimes limited how many, right, because we don't call it a board meeting. We can pick up one or two people, and we even have people from board of supervisors in these local municipalities who will sit in and say, okay, let me give you my opinion.
So have we had any of these workshops?
We have had some of the workshops.
Well, who participated in those so that they could be kept on and added to?
Pete, I should introduce Pete Monstello, by the way. Pete Monstello, Pete is our project manager for energy programs in Virginia, so he's done a lot of these programs, and he's been the one leading the effort here. So I know Heather Tuck's probably been involved. It's probably been a person for Board of Supervisors, right, in some of those meetings. Mr. Bullock was in one or two of those meetings. Oh, yeah, synergistics guy. Wayne Carter. Right, but the other Board of Supervisors. Greg, thank you, Greg. So we've had some participation, but we really need to get some active participation, in my opinion. I don't know that anybody on the board here, other than Mr. Bullock, has sat in, and of course, the administration, right, with Heather and others there, sat in on those.
Do you have do you have these workshops already scheduled, or are you waiting to schedule some more? And how many more do you need?
We're waiting to schedule we've been through some of these, and I think we need to revisit a few.
Okay.
All right, here's a point. And you're right. We're within 60 days of an election. All the opinions are going to change in November. Well, no, it's not sad. You're going to have new people. You're going to have new people that need to be making decisions for funding, and because they're going to be the people that are going to be responsible as trustees to the taxpayers of this county, and they're going to be the people that are going to have to be jointly responsible to the Board of Supervisors, and that's all going to start January. So anything, I feel like most anything you do right now should involve some of these people that are going to be coming on this board, because if you don't, in November, it's what they call it, the lame goose session. We got 2 months that nothing's basically going to happen, and then because you got supervisors changing, you got us changing. Then in January, if you get 6 new members on this board and all 6 of them decide we don't like what you just did, well, we just wasted 4 or 5 months. So either we involve some of the new board members that are going to come on this board in your committees or in your workshops, so that they'll be a little on board when they get here and know what's going on with people that are already here. And that way you got a mixture.
Yeah.
And then in January, they can't say, well, I didn't know anything about it.
Well, I'm okay with whatever you all decide, the board and Dr. Crowe, whatever you all come, I'm happy
I would
with.
recommend that we wait until January to start new, because by then we'll have somebody else that's taken over whatever the facilities is. We may have a new superintendent, or we'll have a new superintendent by that time, new board members. So maybe that's the route to take, rather than moving forward now and then all of that being time that's, not that it's a length.
You don't have to sell me any other way, right? It's really what you all decide you want to do as a board.
I actually think you're right.
And
I mean, I feel
in my
like,
opinion, I think you
and
should.
we as board members, if the ones that are not going to be here, if we want to continue to participate, we can be a part of those committees at that time. But I just feel like since Heather has gone somewhere else, we don't have anybody in that position that's going to actually lead the charge of getting everybody together. I feel like January is probably a better time for you to come back with that new board and meet with them. And then, I mean, that's just my opinion. Meet with the new superintendent, whoever's in that position for facilities, whatever their role is. That's just my opinion.
Okay. Here's food for thought. I would say the workshops around developing scope is really people with the right, that understand the business a little bit, right? So I don't know if there's a problem with not doing some of that, right? Obviously, you're not going to prove anything until you get a new board in place. I hear that, right? But I think you'd be in a better position if you go and continue to do some of the legwork to get some of that done, so in January, when you get a new board, you're really ready to bring back to them at that point a recommendation. Says, this, we've already done this work, here's what we're recommending, right?
But right now, I don't think we have anybody in place to work with you, do we, Dr. Crawley?
No, only Ms. Garner and I, and we are.
I mean, that's my point. Right now, I don't think we have anybody
Right.
on our staff that will be working.
Or if you have someone in the community, quite frankly, or board of supervisors, there are other people maybe who have expertise who'd say, I want to participate in that.
I think that's a good idea, not to just stop totally. I think we need to keep moving forward. And, you know, Glenn, if you wanted to be the front person from our board or anyone, but I think we need to, yeah. I don't think we have time, we shouldn't postpone it totally, I don't think.
The one thing you got from a timing standpoint you should think about, if you wait till January to start, it's a process. You'll have to spend, who knows, 4, 6, 8 weeks getting through this, right, to come up with the technical energy art, the package, what I'm recommending. You got to get through some board meetings at that point, right? School board, you got to get the board of supervisors. To get the contract, that stuff takes time. It'll take 4 or 5 months to get through that process, just to get approvals, right? Once I decide what we're going to do, to get through all the approvals. So you're going to put yourself in jeopardy. A lot of this work gets done in summertime, right, when no students. If you're doing any major mechanical, you're going to do it through a summer shutdown. And so you go really if you wait till January, you're probably putting yourself in a position where you're going to be a year away. You won't do it till the next summer. You'll never get it done in time.
But again, if we don't have somebody that can be dedicated to pulling it all together, making sure all the information is there, and that, I mean, I'll defer to Dr. Crawley on this, and she can advise us as we go forward.
You don't have to give me an answer tonight. I'm just
Right.
bringing you information.
I just
and-
think continuing the workshops to keep going, because, I mean, we have major problems with these increased CO2 levels. We just can't drop the ball. We got to keep going, and we've got, well, Glenn, he's and Wayne Carter's here. He could be, you know, I mean, I think they could, oh, he left? Okay. I mean, we've got people that can do these workshops and get the information and keep the ball rolling.
But what I just heard is we don't have enough people to do the workshops right now. And when all this was going on, that was Heather's responsibility to pull all of it together, to make sure that people were there to contact people, to do all of this.
Yeah. Well.
Unless you want to volunteer to take that. I mean, my point is, I agree, we need to keep the ball rolling.
Yeah.
And there are things that need to happen. However, we need to defer to the staff of what, you know, because we've had several people to resign, and they're in the process of moving people around and all kinds of things. So we need to defer to them to see what they can manage for this part of it as well.
Yeah.
Unless you want to volunteer to take
Well,
over.
I'm
and
just,
then
no,
at that
I'm just saying that, you know, if we could contact Wayne and see if we could keep it going, you know.
Well, we've got the 21st. We have to make some
Okay.
decisions because it'll be on the agenda for us to decide, do we move forward? What is it that we want to do first? Is
Yeah.
it ventilation? Is it windows? And it was on the agenda for tonight. It's been moved to the 21st. So at that point, that's when we can decide how we're going to move forward. And that'll give Dr. Crawley and the staff time to discuss this and
Okay.
say, can we physically do this
decide.
or can we not at this point?
And we can share the just overall general information at the next Joint Education Committee. I had reached out to Ms. Lundy, who is the chair of the Education Committee for the Board of Supervisors, a couple of weeks ago about, you know, when we were going to have our next joint meeting, and she just responded today. So we should be scheduling a Joint Education Committee meeting soon, and we can just share the information
Okay, great.
at that meeting as well.
Anything we can do to help, you know, just let me know, hey, you want to handle it? But one thing we do need to do after you decide how we're going to approach this is update that TEA document, right? It's a signed contract document, if you will, right? That says, I'm supposed to deliver something to you on a certain date, and I
You
can't
can't,
deliver it. I
yeah.
need to move that timeline. So if it's next year, we just need to move the timeline,
Right,
right?
and I understand, but you have to understand where we're
Okay.
sitting right now. You know, we have limited staff that would be able to work on it, and again, with the election, new people coming in, you know, it may be that there's a workshop before the end of the year, but if it's not, it's because we've got to defer to the staff and what they need.
Okay. Yeah, we need to understand when you want to do it, so we change the timelines. There are milestones in that document we need to update, right? So,
And if we can get a copy in our next board packet of what the one is that we have now, what those timelines were, that'll give us an idea, too, of what we need to look at going forward.
I don't think we have a copy of the contract at all, do we?
We were given the timelines back in 2014, but I can't, I'd have to go back through here to search and see where it is.
I mean, I'd like to have another copy of that,
So,
if we could.
TEA document.
yeah.
Okay, if, any other questions? Thank you for your time. Let us know what we can do to help.
All right, thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay, we're going to move on to action. Do I hear a motion that the school board approves the personnel recommendations?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second?
Okay, roll call, please. Yes.
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 No.
Yes.
Okay, do I hear a motion the school board approves to employ 2 certified athletic trainers pending the availability, securing of funds to cover the salaries?
So can I ask a question? Okay.
Do I hear a motion?
I move that we employ 2 athletic trainers.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, now we can have discussion.
So what we're really doing is we're voting on whether to go to the Board of Supervisors, amend their budget for an extra, whatever, $120,000 to hire athletic directors.
No,
So
it's
we're going to ask the Board of Supervisor, are we going to amend our budget?
No.
To ask the Board of Supervisors for the money to cover this? Yeah.
Dr. Crawley and I have not really had time to sit down with the budget since recent personnel changes and things that have happened since July 1 to now. There's been a lot of hirings, there's been a lot of terminations, a lot of transfers. As soon as we are able to do that and make sure that I'm on the right page with payroll, I will then look for money in our budget. If it's not in our budget, then yes, we may have to go to the Board of Supervisors. So that's why I think it's important that we vote pending funding. I'm not saying we don't have it, but right now, I cannot comfortably say we definitely do have it either. I need more time to look at it.
And what Ms. Garner is saying is correct. We've had several conversations over the last week that we just need time to sit down, look at the budget, analyze it, and see if we can find the money there.
I would rather vote on it then. I don't feel comfortable voting on it now.
It's on the floor. I mean,
Yeah,
Well, I'm
just-
waiting for discussion. I'm just giving you an opportunity. I thought you wanted to
No,
say
I don't
something, that's why I was looking at you.
Yeah, I guess some of the other factors that came up with, as far as we don't know what our budget looks like right now as of today.
I know where it was at the last point, and that has been posted online, it's there in detail, it's there in by category. But with personnel changes, it changed, salaries could increase, salaries could decrease. Different things can happen throughout the year within that budget that may free up money, if we were able to hire a $36,000 teacher rather than a 58. So those are the things that I would really like to take a good close look at the personnel side of the budget and see, do we have some wiggle room in there? And to do that, I compare my budget numbers to the personnel contract list when I get that complete. She's just finished hiring.
We were very close last year.
When will you have those numbers?
I hope to, Mr. Stark, can get them within the next week or two. Right now, all of our big reports are due in September. We've got a lot of DOE work that we are also working on, but it's just as soon as I can possibly do it. I don't have a problem with a vote in
independent funding.
funds. You know, and the thing would be, either you've already got the funds that I found out.
We can
Second
move it.
thing would be, we would have to approach the board of supervisors.
And that's,
But he's still got the floor.
There just seems to be some hesitation, and you mentioned with personnel changes. I guess my concern is the status of our budget as far as the clarity that you have, being our CPA, in what our numbers truly are. That's my concern.
I have what our target numbers were. You remember at that time, we had a bunch of teachers still higher, and we based those target numbers on a range of probably $50,000 for a teacher. It's very possible that we hire teachers at 36 instead of 50. It's also possible that we had to pay a teacher, on a higher scale. So it fluctuates there, fluctuates all year with transfers and hires and terminations. Not a great deal, but out of a $48 million budget, 120,000 is not probably even 1%. So if I could find a small percentage in there, then we could probably do it without having to go to the board of supervisors, which would be my preferred way to do it.
So we'll know within a week.
I understand.
Okay.
I believe she
Wait,
said
wait.
one,
Okay.
I was going to ask, is it in order to ask Mr. Crowder another question?
Yes.
Approximately, how long would it take you to do a search?
We would have to advertise and we would, put it on the website and we would put it on, other websites that we would advertise. We would let your association know that we're looking for that, but, I would say at least a couple of weeks. To the applicants and then.
The company that originally approached us with the contract also wanted them to search, they would do the search for us. Again, that was their eagerness to put an athletic trainer in the classroom.
Okay, so that brings up another question. Would there be a cost for them to do the search?
She did not indicate.
Okay. I just wanted to have some idea as to how long it would perhaps take to bring one on board and whether or not that should go into the play of what type of salary it would be, whether or not it's a month or whether it's a week, because that will definitely change the salary of that individual.
Well, you would be looking at prorating at this point.
That's what I was doing.
Mr. Edwards?
could we, since this is going to take a couple of weeks to get the answer back, if we take this vote subject to funding from our immediate, our existing budget, or the Board of or asking the Board of Supervisors, and we approve it that way, could you contract the hourly people for the next 2 to 3 weeks until while we're looking for somebody, at least then we've got them here and we're covered? Will they work on a short-term period, or do they have to hire people to fill that gap?
I think they will work on a short-term period, however, she would still have to do that search to locate someone within an area. In other words, she wants to try to do it within an hour, which would include animals, possibly, well, between them. Her leadership is Chesterfield, would be that 2-hour period.
I mean, the desire and the motion would be to fill it with 2 full-time people, subject to financing either by what we have in the budget or by going to the Board of Supervisors, which we're going to do one or the other, if we do it, the motion that way. But until that happens, which could be 2 to 3 or 4 weeks, we could contract out, and at least we'd be covered with our kids. I'm just asking, in fact, if you could look into that and we could vote the other way, at least we'd be covered. if you can't do that, the worst that's going to happen is we're not going to have athletic trainers for 2 or 3 more weeks.
Again, I can ask if she can do that quickly. The other thing, the money is still an issue.
No, the vote,
I can't pay for it, but I have.
Well, I mean, do we have enough money? I mean, what are we talking about for 2 or 3 weeks? Not much, right?
I think Mr. Everson, we would cover that cost.
We will certainly try to get someone in place as quickly as possible.
Would that be part-time? We're talking part-time?
Yeah, that's just that hourly deal for 2 or 3 weeks.
Did you have something else?
I did. I think Ms. Garner, our CPA, makes a very valid point in regard to the hiring and the separation of employees can make a huge difference. Having done that process many times in personnel and managing full-time salaries, that's an arduous task because you have a lot of employees. And how many have we hired, Ms. Pittard? 70?
Certified in about 15 hospitals, so the neighborhood.
Yeah, I was thinking it was 70 plus, probably our largest hire in many years. But that's an arduous task, and it will take you quite a bit of time to go through that process. But you're right, there could be some dollars to emerge from all of that research. So I think that's a good approach.
Right.
Mhm.
Process, painless as possible if we have to vote.
Is the money for the short term in the budget as well?
We have about $50,000 set aside.
How much?
$15,000 used in the drug testing program. I would hope that there would be some left in there to cover this while
I mean, while I think it's needed, I have a hard time voting for it without absolutely knowing that there's money in the budget or there's going to be money, from the Board of Supervisors, because I don't want to leave this
What was that?
next board wondering, trying to find the money or trying to play catch-up. So I would rather wait until we knew exactly that we have the money in the budget, where it's coming from, whether we have to go to the Board of Supervisors or not.
we need funding information to cover. We can't get funding for anything.
I'd like to amend my motion then to.
We've already got a
We-
motion.
we just have to vote on
Got
it.
We've got to
Oh.
vote on this now.
Call it.
So what's the motion? Read it again.
Well, now, her motion actually didn't say pending the availability. Her motion said, no, the motion that she made was is that the school board approves to employ 2 certified athletic trainers, and that's what the motion on the floor is. So that's what we have to vote on.
Mr. Crowder?
Well, we're going to go on with the vote.
Let's go with the vote.
Okay. Roll call.
Sterling,
Yes.
Tanner,
Abstain.
Palmer,
Yes.
Smiley,
Yes.
Garner,
Yes.
Blackstock,
Yes.
You understand, you all just voted to hire 2 certified athletic trainers. We did not vote on the pending, because that's not the motion
Yeah.
that was on the floor.
I don't
Well, I mean, it's already passed.
Y'all need to go find that money, that's all I can tell you. You chairman.
The vote,
No, I mean, that's what,
well, we got to continue on. I mean,
well, I mean, that was what the vote was.
Yes.
That's what the motion was, and so now that's what the vote is that we will move forward and hire the 2 athletic trainers.
yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure because I read that, it was not, no, it was not pending. I specifically stated that.
My bad.
I specifically stated that. That's what the motion was before we actually voted on it. So, we can't. It's already been voted on.
We just have to move on to the next one.
We have to do what?
The vote has
Yeah,
been taken.
the
Yeah.
vote's been taken, so now you move forward with that. again, like I said, I wanted to make sure. Okay, the next item on the agenda, and I don't even know what the motion would be, so you're going to have to make the motion for the soccer, the spring soccer.
I make a motion, we authorize for the authorization of forming a boys soccer program at both ends of the county in the spring.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, again, members, we're supposed to get information on this on the 21st. It's on the agenda for the 21st. Mr. Sturdivant wanted to bring it tonight, so if you're voting on it, you actually have no information as to whether there's funding for it, who they'll play, or anything like that. So, any discussion?
This is for the middle school.
Yes, this is for the two middle schools. It's authorizing that a boys' spring program can take place. In the event
That's not what your motion was. Your motion was that we authorize.
Yes, it is.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
All right.
That we authorize this to go forward. That's
Yes.
what your motion is.
Yes.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay. Roll call.
Yes.
Tanner,
Abstain.
Palmer,
Yes.
Smiley,
Abstain?
Garner,
Yes.
Westhouse, Mr. Edwards.
Yes.
Okay. The motion is carried, and we are adjourned.